want to come back to what you said about the economic freedom fighters being dishonest. So you're saying, you know, either you apply your mind to being in Parliament, arguing and playing within the kind of domain of Parliament and its rules, or you go to the ground level and kind of do the work there. But one, my question is, are you saying then that the EFF are two-faced? And two, is it not the job of political parties to be both on the ground and within Parliament?
No, absolutely, it's a balance, but you can't say that you draw a salary as a member of an institution and then be trying to break that very institution down. I think there's something fundamentally dishonest about that approach. Of course, parties have to be on there. We've got to mobilize support. I mean, much like a business is judged on profits, we're judged on electoral outcomes and votes. So we need to get as many votes in the box as possible. But there is a great deal of hypocrisy that exists with the economic freedom fighters. I find it very strange that their leader can hold up a copy of the South African Constitution and say, this is the EFF Bible, but then the entire manifesto, if it were to be implemented, the first document that would have to be substantially watered down or altered or even got rid of is the Constitution, because it is the one document that stands in the way of nationalisation without compensation, of seizure of banks, of seizure of privately owned mines. The Constitution, the very Constitution protects against that type of arbitrary behaviour of government, and yet they're saying this is the Bible. I think there's a fundamental dishonesty about saying we must uphold the public protector's findings, we must respect her outcomes, and yet when you yourself are a subject of findings of the public protector relating to massive public corruption and fraud in the Limpopo province and the On Point report. I think there's something fundamentally dishonest about telling the President of the Republic of South Africa to pay back the money when you and your tax affairs and huge amounts owing to the South African taxpayer are not yet settled or sorted out. So it's these type of hypocrisies that I think that the EFF need to answer and to start dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, I do imagine that the EFF have some substantial answers to those kinds of questions. The one about tax I put to Mbuyiseni Ndlozi some months back. And he said they've gone through it, they argue a political agenda to pushing those tax issues, you know, that's from their political dissidents. And that, you know, that doesn't discount their loyalty to the Constitution, it doesn't discount their leaders' kind of commitment to holding President Jacob Zuma to account. It's not an either-or situation.
Well, I think it very much is. I mean, I think it is fundamentally hypocritical of you to come to Parliament and tell people to pay back money that they owe the South African taxpayer when you have a significant tax debt, and then you bring in donors, and then suddenly withdraw those donors when you realise that there's a donations tax that could be attracted. But the other point to make is that they are saying that they uphold the Constitution. The Constitution specifically outlaws incitement to violence, and yet we've seen the very same EFF telling people to go and burn down offices of another political party. We've seen them promoting violence, seen them actively telling and threatening that there will be more violence. So, I mean, you can't say that the Constitution is your Bible, but you only uphold those sections that are convenient for you to do so. The Constitution must be seen as a whole. It can't be cherry-picked from. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to make.
I just want to go back to something that you said about your colleagues in Parliament recently. You described them as a dummy, or you described Parliament as a dummy chamber that slavishly does the bidding of the President. So I imagine there you're speaking about the ANC caucus.
Well, I think that it's Parliament as a whole. What's happened is because the ANC have a majority in Parliament, which they are abusing, they believe that might makes right, and that what we're seeing is a tyranny of the majority taking place. Parliament's logo says very clearly, we're the people. But if one looks at what Parliament's actually doing, and its fundamental inability to hold the executive accountable, might as well say we the executive, because it's become an executive playground. Ministers are allowed to come there and not answer questions properly. Some ministers like Rob Davies and Angie Motshekga just miss repeated oral question sessions, and there's no consequences for them. So we're saying in a properly functioning Parliament, the Speaker and the majority party benches would be rightly concerned that they were not fulfilling their responsibilities. But what's happened is that Parliament has now become an ancillary unit to Luthuli House. And that's why we need the substantial reforms of Parliament to ensure that we entrench members of Parliament's rights across party lines to hold the executive accountable. And it should be something that the ANC are as obsessed as the opposition about, ensuring that MPs' roles are being fulfilled, because we essentially are sent there to represent people and to ensure that their views and the things that matter most to them are raised in that arena. If we are unable to do so and we're unable to hold the executive accountable, I think every MP is then failing in their responsibility to not only the institution, but to the people on the ground that have sent us there as well to represent them.